What's up, Navigating Academia family? This is your buddy, Dr. J. Phoenix Singh, coming to you to be able to answer a valued viewer's question. Now, you guys know me. I love you to death. Would really appreciate if you guys hit that thumbs up button to be able to help the channel out. Make sure this and all of our other videos get significantly more views. And also be sure to comment below, either with your questions or just a comment about literally anything. Helps the YouTube algorithm. In any case, today what I figured that I would do was to be able to answer a question by Nif Nif. I'm assuming that that is not a legal name, but then again, I knew a guy in college whose legal name was Shizzle, so Nif Nif, I apologize if that's your real name. In any case, the question that Nif Nif had as part of a very kind comment, so Nif Nif, thank you very much for that, was what are my favorite parts about being a psychologist? And it's funny, guys, because in terms of this channel, I talk so much about academia that sometimes I don't talk a lot about being a psychologist and what that's like. And I'm a bit of a strange guy insofar as I've worked in 3 different sectors, which is the first thing that I love about being a psychologist, especially having a clinical psychology PhD specifically. I have the capacity to work in multiple different areas of the field of behavioral health. So for me specifically, I've worked as an academic researcher and became a tenured full professor. I have also worked in clinical practice, working in prisons and forensic psychiatric facilities. And in addition to that, I've actually run a government unit in Switzerland. So at the end of the day, when it comes to these 3 different areas, the fact that you can work for the government, you can work in clinical practice, either at a clinic or a hospital, somebody else's private practice, or your own private practice, which we'll get to in a second, or do academic research, be it something that you're kind of funding yourself. These days, you've got crowdfunding opportunities as well, where you can have other individuals donate money towards you doing the research that you're passionate about, or going the traditional route, which is to be able to get grant funding. If you guys are ever interested in learning more about grant funding, be sure to be able to go to www.publicationacademy.com, where we've got 3 master classes, about 12 to 15 hours of content, going to teach you everything you need to know about finding grants, applying for them in terms of writing a great grant proposal, and then if you're lucky enough to be able to get a grant, how do you effectively manage that grant to be able to make sure that not only are you making the best use of those funds, but also that you're able to sustain that funding over time, be it from the same funder or a different funder, okay? So, number 2, back to private practice. I don't know about you guys. I know so many of you who I work with one-on-one in terms of sessions, you guys are really passionate about starting private practices. And I love that about you guys because this is truly the entrepreneurial spirit. I live in the United States right now. Daria and I are in Odessa, in Ukraine, but I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area, Northern Virginia. And let me tell you that there is no country that I would rather start a business in terms of opportunities than the United States. And this is, as a guy who's lived in 6 different countries on 3 continents, that's saying a lot. And the U.S. is great, legally speaking, for business, for companies. Lots of opportunities there. And there are in other countries as well, but I'm only speaking from my experience. And I love entrepreneurs. I spent a lot of time mentoring young entrepreneurs. I started my first company when I was just 26, and I sold it when I was 30. And now running Publication Academy is like the passion of my life. And we can talk about that some other time. But starting a private practice is similar insofar as, very rarely do people have, a clinical psych PhD or society and an MBA, like a master's in business administration. If you're watching this, I want you to know that you do not need a business degree in terms of being able to develop your own private practice. You don't need that. It wouldn't hurt. Having an undergraduate business major will help a lot. Taking some finance classes, some accounting classes. Is it going to be boring and dry? Absolutely. Are you also talking to the guy who loves finance and accounting now? You absolutely are. Just like statistics are the keys to academia, budgeting and finance and being wise with your money are the keys to the kingdom, as well as sales and marketing when it comes to building your private practice. If you ever want to talk about building a private practice, book a session, we can talk about it, right? Especially if you're just getting started, it helps to be able to have some experienced assistance, okay? But that's number 2, is being able to follow that entrepreneurial spirit and start your own private practice. you should temporally budget, right? You guys know me. I talk about financial budgeting. I talk about temporal budgeting in terms of the amount of time things are estimated to take. And I also talk about emotional budgeting, right? And I want you to both emotionally and temporally budget anywhere between at least 3 to 5 years for your practice to really get off the ground. Does this mean that you will not be the exception to the rule? And maybe the first year you'll make $80,000 after expenses? No, it doesn't mean that, right? But again, this is the exception to the rule. Usually it takes quite some time to be able to firmly establish your presence, particularly because in this day and age, let's be honest, when it comes to psychology, kind of a dime a dozen, which is super unfortunate. You can go and see a social worker, you can go and see a counselor, you can go and see an EDD education professional. You can go and see an individual who's a substance abuse professional. You can go and see an individual who's a PsyD psychologist. In some states, an MA, so like a master's level psychologist, a clinical psych PhD. In certain places, particularly major metropolitan areas, oh my goodness, making yourself really in demand is very challenging because oftentimes you can do as much sales and marketing as you want, but really word of mouth and referrals is going to get you just as much business, right? Word on the street is going to give you just as much business as is doing Facebook marketing campaigns, Instagram campaigns, Psychology Today ads, you name it, okay? So just something good for you guys to know. So that's number 2. Third thing that I love about being a psychologist is the reason why most of you who are watching this, who maybe you want to be a psychologist or you're interested in psych, why it is that you're interested in it, which has to do with helping other people and gaining a deeper understanding, not only of other people, right, but also of yourself. This is something where it's a wonderful thing to have a therapist. I always talk about this in other videos, as you know, and I highly recommend that everybody go to a therapist at some stage. Going to see a therapist does not have to do with necessarily you having any kind of formal diagnosis and psychopathology and these things, so I don't want you to think about that. All of us need to deeply explore our lives, and talking only to our friends and family, these are individuals who love you very much. They're very subjective. To be able to get an objective perspective on your own life from somebody who's being paid to be able to just do nothing but give you advice on your life and help you reflect on your own life is pretty amazing. And so to be able to play that role in people's lives is a total blessing. In terms of the peer-reviewed research literature, to be able to read it and to be able to discern the quality of research, because you guys know how it is. If a study finding is sexy enough, people are going to talk about it on the news and so forth. However, this is the case where if you were able to actually read the methods section and the results section of articles and know what they're talking about, you will be shocked at how many studies are so poorly methodologically planned, or the research is conducted in a way where the statistical analytic techniques are sorely lacking, okay? So at the end of the day, to be able to get a greater discernment of truth or approximations of truth by learning more about research methods and behavioral stats. This is also a great part of being a psychologist. So those are the few favorite parts that I've gotten, if of being a psychologist. If you're a psychologist out there, tell us in the comments below to all of our viewers, what is it that you love about being a psychologist? If any of you are considering becoming a psychologist and want some more guidance about how exactly does that work in your country, feel free to book a one-on-one session with me. I'll put the contact details down in the description below, and you can also follow me on all my social media accounts like Instagram, Twitter, and so forth, which is at drphoenixsing.com. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye-bye.